Hello, Internet. Welcome to episode number 291 of the Comic Watchers Show. He's Chad. I'm Matt. This is Comic Watchers Show, where we talk about all the comics and with the creators that you love the most. So we've got returning to the show this week, Mr. Mark Russell. Mark, how the heck are you?
I'm doing good. Doing good. Thank you.
Thank you. After I butchered my intro there with our little word salad and tripped over my own tongue, but we'll make it through, I think. So
don't worry, there's people out there worse than you.
That's what I tell myself every day.
Well, thank goodness for that. But so it's the week of Thanksgiving, and we are here to talk, not unironically, I should say, about the comic Thanksgiving by Mark Russell, Morissette, from Ahoy Comics. Mark, this is definitely a little darker than your normal fare, although it's
I think my norm is progressively getting darker.
I was going to say, Death Ratio is pretty dark. Not a Raw Robots is pretty dark.
To think of myself as a mood ring for society, and I think the mood is definitely getting a little. In fact, sometimes I kind of wonder if maybe I'm getting too dank because of all that's going on in the world. Maybe I should write a musical or something to sort of cleanse my soul. But yeah, it's a very dark, but I think also for people to read it, a pretty funny and engaging and not entirely, depressing experience. I would hope.
No, I don't think it's depressing. I think it's got a lot to say about family in general and serial killers.
Yeah, I think too. That's what people want to hear about. At this time of year, they want to hear about family and they want to hear about serial killing.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about the story itself.
Okay. So yeah, it takes place over a Thanksgiving dinner, a normal Thanksgiving dinner like millions of people will have across this country. Only the twist is that one of the people at this table turns out as a serial killer. And every year this family has a ritual where everyone has to reveal something to the family that they've never told them before, and one of the family members reveals that they're a serial killer, and so it's really about like how the rest of the family responds. What matters more to them, the basic decency that they owe the rest of the human race, or their allegiance to this person and their family if they come to know and love. And it's in no small way a metaphor for what's going on in our country in terms of these people that you thought you knew your whole life turn out to be kind of monsters. And you're just looking across the table saying, how did I go to Thanksgiving dinner with you, for decades without noticing this? And also now that I know, what do I do?
And what you cover the complete spectrum of with the family. You have the grandfather who's checked out, the grandmother who's kind of, well, not kind of, but very racist.
Definitely racist.
The jaded brother and their parents, and then you have I forget her name, but she's the one who actually is like a decent human.
Joe is kind of like the storyteller. She's the one narrating the story, and I think also the one that I tried to speak through. Usually when I write a story like this, there's one character who's sort of my personal spokesman, and then the others are kind of representing different perspectives or different archetypes and whatnot. But yeah, she's the one who's sort of my spokesman, Joe, at this Thanksgiving dinner.
Right. She's definitely our POV character. So how did, I think you kind of just answered this question, but it seems like examining the state of play in America right now is how you came across with this story. How did it wind up being just a one shot rather than maybe a mini series or something of that nature?
Well, I think I've sort of transitioned more to writing one shots. I still like writing series, but the thing I like about one shots is that when you write a series, it's disheartening to see how the sales drop, and they do. It's not just me; it's for everyone. The sales drop after issue 1. About issue 2 usually sells about half as many as that, and then issue 3 and so on usually sell less than that. So what this tells me is that not everybody's finishing the story, and to me that's always kind of it's kind of disheartening. It's one thing, as somebody who came from outside comics, somebody who wrote books for years before coming into comics, It's it's possible somebody read about a third of my book and then threw it away, or just stopped reading. But I never had anyone buy a third of my book or buy a quarter of my book. So now with comics, you have a very real possibility that somebody's going to only buy a small chunk of story you're writing. So if I can write, the more stories I can write that are completely told in one issue, the more I can kind of work around that. And whether they like it or not, they at least get a complete story in that one issue.
Okay. And what brought this particular story to Ahoy in this instance?
Well, Ahoy is my go-to publisher for things that are kind of satirical and funny, because usually when you talk to a publisher, you say, okay, it's a humorous comic. They sort of hang up on you, or at least sort of cold quit on you, like in the middle of your sentence. But Ahoy actually wants that. They actually want things that are funny, and they're the one publisher that kind of like revels in that. And I think they also really aren't afraid of social commentary. They aren't afraid of controversy. So, I published Second Coming with them, which I kind of consider my flagship series, but which is very controversial and sort of, the sort of poison that, the sort of response you would expect to get not in a million years from other publishers. But they went in with both feet. So they're kind of my go-to publisher for things where I think other publishers would not have the courage to touch this. And it's a very sort of, I think it's a very sort of divisive tale, in that it is unapologetically a metaphor for what is going on in our country right now.
Right.
And not everybody's going to be happy with that.
That was going to be my question. Was there any? Like you said, Ahoy's pretty good about doing stuff. So they weren't surprised when you came to them with the story pitch. They were like, okay,
No, they were the ones pushing me to do it. Like, I think I just wrote like a little microcosm thing, like after the election. Like, it's like finding out someone in your family is a serial killer, and then like Tom Pyre contacted me and said that would be a great comic, by the way. And I said, yeah, I think it would. And he said, well, consider yourself approved. So it really was kind of their idea to do the comic. But it, I like writing knowing I have the full backing of the company, and I have the full editorial sort of stamp of approval, and that they're not going to try to mitigate or kneecap the ideas that I'm trying to talk about in the comic. So I always think, if you're going to write a comic that's about ideas, or it's about social commentary, the worst thing you can do is to sort of mitigate it, or to sort of go halfway there. Either go both feet in all the way across the water, or don't bother. Do something else. There's the worst thing you can do is sort of go halfway into the river and then drown. But luckily, Ahoy really wanted the full. They wanted the full experience of Thanksgiving.
Oh, because when I'm going into the story, I thought, okay, I know there's a serial killer, but I thought that it was going to be like a mystery, and you had to figure out who it was.
You find out pretty relatively soon.
Right.
It's more about how the family reacts to the knowledge that, like, because some of the families, like appalled, as you'd imagine most of us would be, as I imagined before last year, all of us would be appalled to find out this member of your family is this deeply evil person. But then half the family is kind of like, well, I'm not so sure. Is this the worst thing? Maybe they could be killing for good. And it's sort of my own sort of disgust, and also just sort of confoundment at finding out how many people actually think of the world in this way. Well, maybe it's not such a bad thing to be a serial killer. Well, maybe they're serial killing for a good cause.
Was there?
I think so.
Besides this, for the story, was there any reason why you made the uncle a game show host?
It's part of the metaphor, yeah. And that he's a guy who's used to like giving out prizes and like sort of making deals. He hosts sort of a let's make a deal type show. So then he gives them a chance to sort of make a deal with the family. It's like, you can either, have these wonderful presents I was going to give you all, or you can have me kill someone for you. And I think kind of like the question that's presented to us as American voters, it's like, well, you can either have, health insurance and, a social safety net and jobs, or you can have the joy of watching us kill people for you.
Right.
And so it's like part of that metaphor.
So, you've got this, you've got, like you said, Second Coming, and you've got Billionaire Island, all from Ahoy. Do you have anything else cooking at Ahoy right now?
Yeah, I've got a few things. There's sort of one shots like
Anything
this.
you can talk about, I should say.
I got one I'm very proud of that Russ Vaughn is doing the art for, called The Forgotten Divine, and it should be out in early 2026. And it's about these people that all sort of have the same dream, and they all have the similar dreams of what appears to be an alien planet. And so they form this cult called the Forgotten Divine, and they buy houses together in this cul-de-sac. And they try to find new members who are having these dreams and attract them to this group they've begun calling the Forgotten Divine. And yet the FBI is concerned about this, so they start looking into it. And I don't want to give too much away about it, but I feel like it's one of the better things I've ever written.
Awesome.
So what was it about the artist on Thanksgiving that made you want to work with him, or what about his style do you think lends to the story?
Well, Alan Morissette had worked with Ahoy before and was very sort of well regarded by Tom Peyer, the editor-in-chief there. So he recommended him to me for Thanksgiving, and I wasn't sure, I wasn't very familiar with Alan's work, but he showed me some samples and it looked good. And one of the things that I really liked about Alan's work going into this was that he draws realistic people very well. He doesn't try to draw like movie stars. He doesn't try to make everyone look like Power Girl or whatever. So he draws realistic people, and he draws like realistic houses well. And I felt like that was kind of like the secret sauce for the story. It needed to feel like an actual family that you might recognize at Thanksgiving, and also admirably on his part, because he's Belgian. He's a guy who's never actually celebrated a Thanksgiving dinner before. So he had to actually, that was probably a little bit outside his comfort zone to actually draw a Thanksgiving dinner.
Huh. Yeah, that's something.
Like I had things in the script, like they have a gun like mounted on the wall on the mantle, and he had no idea what that would look like or how you would do that, because it's just like something you would never see in Belgium.
Yeah. That's a very American phenomenon, I feel.
Right.
So go ahead, Chad.
So as you were developing the story, how deep of a dive did you do into serial killers? Because the guy has like 3 different MOs, and, and at the end they're like, what's another one?
Right. Well, this is something like watching these true crime shows or shows about serial killers. The thing that always sort of I always thought it's like, well, I understand psychologically you have an MO for a reason. You're feeding this deficiency in yourself by doing this one thing that becomes your MO. Like you need to slash the throat, or you need to collect a souvenir or whatnot. It's like, but if you could do that and then have a secondary or a tertiary MO where you just do something random to the body, you can get away with it a lot more because you're throwing the cops off. Whereas if you just do the one thing you're actually psychologically compelled to do and leave it there, it becomes a lot easier for them to hone in on you or to tell which murders are yours versus another killer's.
So you're saying like the wet bandits
shouting at the TV. It's like you said, serial killers. Like, you're such an idiot. If you just dismembered the body into 10 more pieces, they would have thought it was this other serial killer.
That's interesting. Like, did your research take you into like historically relevant serial killers like Ed Gein or John?
No, I did almost no research for this comic because it wasn't really about that. It wasn't really meant to be a documentary on anything. It was just sort of my own sort of metaphor. But I got to employ this sort of thought I'd always had about serial killers, about how easy it would be to sort of at least obfuscate, law enforcement efforts to catch you just by changing up your MO or hiding it within like things that you would do that aren't necessarily part of your MO. And also, part of what his strategy is, one of the reasons why he's able to get away with this for so long, is that he kills people that he doesn't think the law is going to be that invested in finding the killers of. So he kills like migrant workers and people he thinks are like the law is not going to be super motivated to like crack this case. He doesn't go after the beautiful rich white girl that you always see on CNN or whatever. He goes after people he thinks that society's not going to miss, which is part of the commentary.
Right. Society has a tendency to, and this is one of those unspoken truths, but has a tendency to place more value on certain people than it does others. And
well, I think this is part of the strategy behind othering, right? The reason why they attack like trans people, or the reason why they attack immigrants, because they think no one's terribly up in arms if they go after them. They think that these are people you can sort of like get, half, if not most of Americans to sort of be okay with you taking away their rights. But of course, there's no such thing as taking away someone else's rights without taking away your own. So it's a means by which they've convinced Americans to give up their own civil liberties by saying, well, we're just going to go after, these Tren de Agua like gang members, or we're just going to go after these trans people or whatever, and then you grant them the rights to do that, and suddenly they now have the legal precedent with which to do it to you, and it's the whole leopards eating faces, the party of leopards eating faces phenomenon, where it's the leopard doesn't stop at the faces of the people you hate, it eventually eats everybody's face.
Right.
And you're also not very in the story to the police, which I was good with, because they're like, not to give anything away, but they're like very laissez-faire, even when she's trying to get them to come and look at something.
Yeah, I've had very few encounters with the police myself, but one of the few I did is that we had a crime in our neighborhood, and we reported it, and the police came out. And it was sort of based on that, where they just sort of showed up and, we'll take your statement.
Right. By the numbers.
I very much got the impression they weren't, that was going to end there. It's just like, shut these people up. We're never going to actually look into this. So then we had to like investigate it ourselves, and we found like the guy who had actually, done this thing, through social media and online, and then we actually did the police's work for them, presented them with, here's the guy's name, here's, another witness who saw this, and their video footage of them. And they said, oh, we had that guy in custody for a completely unrelated crime. We already let him go, They
oh, wow.
don't care. And to them, it's like, being like, like a desk job, the cushiest desk job you could imagine, And so it's kind of about like that. It's like, if they're not motivated, nobody's like looking over their shoulder or threatening to fire them over something, they're probably not going to be terribly motivated to like actually find this guy.
Right. Either that or they overreact in the wrong ways.
Yeah, it's sort of the opposite of the propaganda, you normally see in like these CSI shows, where it's like somebody, gets murdered, some 13-year-old gets murdered, and the cops will not rest until they find.
Yeah.
It's like they're crying and they're shaking, and we're gonna leave it. We're not gonna leave a single stone unturned. That's not been my experience.
Now, so given that it's a Thanksgiving and the book about Thanksgiving, what's your favorite Thanksgiving part of the meal?
Oh gosh, I'll take pretty much anything with cranberry sauce on it.
Okay.
I also really love the stuffing.
Well, was it just writing that you put the severed appendage in the bread pudding or
banana pudding? Yeah.
Banana pudding. Yep.
Someone pointed out that I have like banana references in almost all of my work, and so now that they brought that to my attention, because it's purely subconscious before, now since it's no longer sublimated, I make a conscious effort of actually like having bananas make a cameo. Pretty much all my
Sam Raimi with that one car.
Yeah. Now I feel honor bound to like keep the banana theme going.
Now I'm going to have to go back and read and look for the bananas.
Yeah. No, there's a
Yes.
lot of bananas.
Anything else about Thanksgiving that you would like, think that people should know about?
I just am very proud of it, and Thanksgiving coming up, I think it would be a perfect sort of addition to your holiday table. So
I think it
check
would
it out. And it's only a couple weeks old, so they should still have some in the comic shops.
Well, kind of moving on. We can always come back to Thanksgiving if you guys want to. But you just wrapped up earlier this year the Dark Age Batman, and I know we talked at New York Con that you're working on Wonder Woman.
Yeah, it's been formally
complete
announced,
trick.
but it seems to be a pretty poorly kept secret, mostly because I keep laughing about it. But yeah, we're doing Mike and I are doing a follow up to both Superman Space Age, and Batman Dark Age. It's going to be called Wonder Woman Golden Age, and we're working on it right now, and it should be out in 2026. But it sort of completes the trilogy, albeit if they were to offer us the chance to do a fourth one, I would take it. I would keep doing these Age comics, creating our own sort of bubble DC universe forever if they let me.
Yeah. Like, as far as titles go, Green Lantern: The Atomic Age is just laying there, like waiting for you to pick it up.
Yeah, I could do right. I'll try to think of another one after.
Yeah, Aquaman: The Age of Aquarius.
Right. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, you're better at this than I am.
Hey,
Flash: The Age of Speed. I don't know.
It's not. Hey, I just come up with random titles. You have to actually write the thing.
Patent pending.
Yeah, there you go. So, what is it about this particular corner of DC that you've created and nurtured that keeps you wanting to come back to it, and revisit it?
Well, I think because it's tied to one of my, one of the things I really love to write about, which is history. One of the things I'm a huge history buff. So these titles, I think, are unique in the DC universe in that they take place against the backdrop of actual American and world history. The president, sort of social movements and stuff that are going on in the background all show up in these comics. In a way that the people who are writing Batman and Superman comics in the 1960s and 70s didn't really have the privilege of using talking about Watergate or the civil rights movement because they were writing for 10-year-old kids. I'm writing for a more adult audience, so I have I think an advantage over in that I can talk about the Equal Rights Amendment or the Watergate break-in, and not only will people know what I'm talking about, but it's the kind of story they're actually interested in reading. So I get it's like this whole sort of it's like you open the door and find out that what you thought was a 2-bedroom apartment is actually part of a mansion, and that's kind of what I feel like. It's like if you approach the DC universe as like existing in real history. If you open that door and find if this is happening in the 60s or 70s or 80s, then you've got the rest of the history that people know about within that time, in addition to the DC lore to talk about. And so it's like you all suddenly have, by virtue of marrying the two, infinitudes more to say about it.
Yeah.
Plus, I think it's probably one of the only series where you actually get to see the characters age.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a real appeal too. And I did the same thing with the Fantastic Four, the life story one. But I always find this really sort of appealing and frankly more satisfying when when it's not episodic storytelling. The characters actually live long enough to see the consequences of their actions, or to see that the cumulative effect of everything they've done throughout their lives at the end of their lives.
Yeah.
It's very powerful, and it's much more of a human story than if it's just everything sort of resets at the beginning of every issue.
So, are there any other projects with DC that you'd be interested in tackling, either Elseworlds or within their main universe?
Yes, I am currently working on a pitch. I don't know how well received it will be, but I'm currently working on a pitch for Rex the Wonder Dog, a Rex the Wonder Dog story. where he was, in the basic premise is that he was like a Hollywood dog. He was a trained movie dog who would do stunts and perform in action movies in Hollywood. But then he gets replaced by CGI. Like they don't need a stunt dog anymore because they've got CGI. So he goes to work with the Justice League, and he's, he's helping bring down villains and working in crime, and he's in real danger. But he doesn't know that. He still thinks he's on a movie set. He still thinks that like that this is like play acting. And he doesn't realize what imminent danger he's in.
So it's like the inverse of Bolt.
Yeah, sort of like Bolt. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. They recently published that Crypto miniseries by Ryan North. I'm sure they might be receptive to something like that.
Yeah, it seems like this is probably the time. This is probably the time to make that pitch.
Yeah, most definitely. Awesome.
Did you recently have a story that you worked on with Mark Waid? I remember it was like a action, or was it?
It was World.
World Finest.
I want to say 24. I forget the actual number of the issue, but yeah, we co-wrote one together because he was running up against tight deadlines. We reached out and said, "Would you be interested in writing half this comic for me?" And I said, "Well, I've always been a big fan of Mark Waid.
Yeah. How do you say no to him?
Nicest dudes in comics, and I like his writing." So I said, "Yeah, I think our writing, dovetails well together." So, and it was absolutely one of the best experiences I've had collaborating with people. Just like fun and ideas, sort of begetting more ideas, and the multiplier effect of like working with somebody who is also very creative but in a different way. It was just a great time, and I think it turned out really well. And it's funny because I find on social media when people talk about that issue or they post panels, they have a hard time guessing like who did what, which means that the collaboration went well, in my opinion.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, that one panel with the banana, I now know is you.
Yep, that's a giveaway. Yeah,
a giveaway now that we know about it. Earlier this year, you also wrapped up your run on X Factor over at Marvel. How was that working with Tom Brevoort and everybody else in the X offices?
Oh, it was great. I loved doing it. I wish I could have done more, but the 10 issues I got in were I'm very proud of, and they were very. I think they were very helpful. It was a good editorial process because it wasn't about what I couldn't do so much as just like creating the guardrails of what would violate other. It was basically just like you have the right to swing your fist until it reaches the end of another person's nose, and so they were very much about letting me swing my fist with the writing of that up until the point it impugned upon another series, or it was violating or somehow harming what somebody was doing in one of the other X series. So I feel like that was good. It was a good editing experience because they provided the safeguards to keep me within the bounds of the X universe and
right
on with it, but not so much that I felt like I was being controlled or that I wasn't in charge of the story.
Well, I would imagine that the X universe can be pretty daunting place to just jump in.
Yeah, it definitely is because there's been so much has gone before, and so much good stuff that has gone before, and also because there's so many people playing in the sandbox at the same time. You don't really know which characters you get to use. But I found very early on that it helped to sort of just leave as much of that to the editors as possible. Well, tell me who I can use. Just give me a list of the crayons that are available, and I'll color something with those. And I also definitely wanted different power sets and different sort of complementary sort of powers within the team. So if I felt like there wasn't somebody available who had those powers or had that sort of set that I wanted, then it gave me the pleasant problem of now I get to create my own. I get to, which was really, I think, probably the most fun writing the series was not so much writing these characters that everyone knows and loves, but creating my own sort of mutants, which I two of my favorite characters to write were Granny Smite, who was like this old woman who finds out that she's an immortality mutant, in her 80s, which is a real problem if you're in your 80s.
Sure.
But and then also Zyber, who is like this young kid, like a 17-year-old, who creates these electromagnetic pulses. But each electromagnetic pulse is like getting a million X-rays. So eventually, one of these electromagnetic pulses is going to kill him, and he has no idea which one it's going to be. So he tries not to use his power unless it's like really urgent, unless it's going to save his and other people's lives. But then when he does, he never knows if he's going to come out of it alive. And so having those two characters on the same team, I think, gives the team a lot more sort of philosophical gravity, because then they have conversations about mortality or what it's like to fear death, or to versus appreciating the fact that you want to die, and so I felt like the ability to create my own mutants meant as much to me in writing X Factor as being able to sort of play in the X-Men sandbox.
Right.
Do you think it was easier coming into the X-Men sandbox, being that it was spinning out of the fall of Krakoa and kind of a launching of the new era?
I definitely do. I mean, I loved the Krakoa stuff, but it would have been I would have felt much more hamstrung about what I could get away with tonally if I had worked in that world. Whereas because this was a brand new era, the way I sort of approached it, the way I thought about it was like, well, this isn't an ice cream parlor. It's like a Baskin Robbins or whatever. There needs to be 31 flavors. And so I felt like they've got these other flavors covered. So I'm going to do something that's not in the flavor buckets, of the other comics. And so I did something. I leaned into sort of like satire and sort of narrative about the digital economy and whatnot, and about how at odds it is to expect the public service to exist alongside sort of entertainment, and that was sort of my angle. And I think it put me far afield of what else was going on in the X Factor or in the X universe, which might have hurt it. But also at the same time, I felt like, well, this is what I imagined everybody was going to be doing. Everybody's going to be sort of staking out their own territory or their own genre of what this, it's like you go in and there's 12 different titles, X titles. There are going to be 12 different flavors. Didn't necessarily work out that way, but that's kind of what I envisioned, and I think that was what made it interesting to me.
Right. I mean, we've got no shortage of characters to work with. So
yeah, right. And I feel like there's two kinds of superhero writers, and I don't say this to be self-congratulatory because I don't think either one of them are wrong. I just think there's people who want to write these characters because they love these characters, and there's people who want to write these characters because they have something to say and want the people who love those characters to read it. And I feel like I'm one of the latter ones, where it's just like more, it's not so much that like I just want to continue seamlessly within the soap opera of these characters, but that I have other things I want to write about, and I feel like it's fun to write about them using characters you are already familiar with, to borrow upon the cultural equity of things you already know and love, to talk about something you may not know, to introduce you to something you may not already know and love. I think that's probably been, if anything, is like sort of the hallmark of my career in working with licensed properties. It's like I don't want to just come in and make like a plausible X Factor story, an X Factor story that fits in seamlessly with what you expect from X Factor. I don't really see much value in that.
Oh, speaking of licensed property, is Racer X, has that wrapped, or are you in the process?
I'm still working on it. We're doing 8 issues. It's a limited series, written in conjunction with the main Speed Racer series by David Pepose. And it's been a lot of fun to work with. But yeah, I'm still chipping away at the second story arc in that. But yeah, having a lot of fun doing that. And again, it's the same sort of thing, where it's like what I want to do is take something you thought was familiar and make it a little strange to you, or make it a little different than what you expected. So I'm approaching Racer X almost as like a film noir character. He's like sort of a damaged, aspiring race car driver who wasn't able to like actually make it on the track, but now sort of like is this sort of protective ghost of Speed Racer on the track, and helping him have the success he could never have on his own.
Is that an approach that you found to be kind of intuitive to the character himself, or was it more outside the box thinking?
It was very much how I interpreted, the Racer X character when I was watching the original Speed Racer cartoons when I was a kid. It's like, this is like sort of I don't want to say a Deus Ex Machina, but this is like sort of like a guardian angel or a protective ghost who sort of shows up when he's needed. And he's got this motivation that's never really sort of expressed in the cartoons, which in a way was kind of fascinating to me. It's like, well, why is this guy doing this, or what's his game? What's his end game? And so it gave me a chance to really create that on my own and turn it more into like this crime story where he's trying to bring down this syndicate that controls the car acrobatic team, and that is like basically controlling the gambling on the X circuit, and is like making millions of dollars for like the mob by controlling who wins these races. And this mob, this criminal syndicate, has destroyed his life. So he feels like the way to bring them down is to help Speed win all the races, so that their drivers, their bets never pay off.
Interesting. So how does that work as a complementary story to Papose's main Speed Racer book?
Well, it's darker, I think, so it's tonally complementary, because Papose's book, which is excellent, by the way, is very much more about speed, and it's much more sort of the Technicolor and sort of like child-friendly fare that you remember from the cartoons, which is great. I mean, it's everything you'd want a Speed Racer comic to be. But this gives it like a little, I think the Racer X title gives it a little more of an adult sort of like, it's like the video poker lounge in a restaurant. And also it really fleshes out the story of Racer X, and adds this sort of sadness, this sort of this motivation to him that doesn't make a lot of sense without it.
Was it challenging working on a licensed property like this?
No, I mean, it's always challenging in the sense that you have to work within the rules of this character, this franchise. But I kind of like that. I kind of like taking a character that everybody thinks they know and bringing myself to it, talking about things that I want to talk about through the mouthpiece of this character that I don't really control.
Okay.
So last time we had you on the show, we talked about your Grim and Grimmer, the figure fairy tales. Are you hoping to revisit that, or?
I don't know if I'm going to do any more. I'm very happy with the book. If you're out there looking for a fairy tale themed book to read, I'd be happy if you check out Grim and Grimmer. But I don't know. I feel like for me the key is to sort of keep moving forward. That said, I am revisiting a couple of older things from my career in the near future, which I won't talk about because they haven't been announced and are very premature. But stay tuned.
You're putting out a new version of God is Disappointed in You?
Not going
I know that you're very involved with the Northwestern cartoonists. Am I correct that you guys have like am I correct that you guys have a physical space now?
Yes, we do. We are open. We're in downtown Portland. It's a beautiful space. We got a lot of really great exhibits right now. We are having our sort of grand opening on December 5th. I mean, we're open now, but it's sort of a soft opening. But we're having our sort of welcome party where it's open to the public, and we're going to be keeping normal hours starting December 5th. So if you're in Portland or the Pacific Northwest area and you want to see some cool cartoon arts and comics and stuff, come by sometime in December and check it out. I'm also going to be doing a sort of an in-residence sort of signing and presentation there with Mike Allred on December 20th.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great.
So what you're saying is you're keeping busy.
That's what
This is the way I prefer to be. It's like I wouldn't know what else to do with my life.
Well, you've been doing this professionally for a decade or so now.
Yeah, about 10
Give or
years.
take.
And,
I mean-
and it's kind of what I find, like wake up in the morning. It's like it's hard for me to take a day off because it's like, well, what would I do on my day off? Well, if I want to do what I want to do, if I'm going to do what I want to do, it's probably going to be something like this. It's probably going to be something, staring. It's hard to put, it sounds boring when I say it out loud, but there's few things in life I like more than just sort of staring at a laptop screen until something comes to me.
Yeah.
So, how was your? I know we talked like within the first hour of New York Comic Con, but how was the rest of your show? Did you have a chance to go around and see things? Did you make it over to the Fantastic Four pop-up?
I did not make it to the Fantastic Four pop-up. I was very busy at New York because I was doing not only my own table but signings and panels and stuff. So I was all over the place, and it was a very well-attended convention. There were so many people. You had to plan about a half an hour in advance to go anywhere, but I had a great time. And one of the best things about New York Comic Con, of course, is that it's in New York. So then after the convention, it's like, well, now I got like 4 or 5 hours to hang out in New York. So I had a great time. I always have a great time on that show.
I know that when we were we're talking Thursday morning, we were talking about whether or not AWA was having another after party.
Yeah, no, they've had one before. I mean, I think it's just a question of when they. Some years they do, some years they don't. But yeah, to me, it's like one of the things I love. One of the main reasons I go to like New York and San Diego both is like I love all the parties.
I like the free food and not having to.
Yeah, I think as part, you don't get a retirement plan, you don't get health insurance in this job, but you get some like chicken skewers and turkey.
There are perks.
So yeah, there are perks. You got to take advantage of them.
Absolutely. So what does your con schedule look like for next year so far?
I have no idea. I have not really signed up for many conventions next year already. I'm going to be doing some industry-facing events, hopefully, like Comics Pro and ALA. But yeah, I have no idea which conventions I'm doing. I think it's a safe bet I'll be at Rose City, which is my local convention here in Portland, and probably Emerald City in Seattle. But beyond that, I couldn't tell you.
Right. Okay. Nothing wrong with that. I mean.
No, I think I'm going to dial it back because this year I went to like about a dozen conventions. That
oh wow,
too much. Yeah.
That's a lot, and you
Yeah.
have your full-time job to do too.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's not so much the travel; it's working, while traveling.
So I know that at New York, you were nice enough to do a sketch for me. Any plans to do another sketch book, or just kind of moving forward with that also?
I have about enough cartoons to do another cartoon book, and I'm happy to do sketches for people live whenever they come and ask for someone deigns to sort of indulge my amateurish artwork. I'm happy to give it to them.
I thought it was really good, and the texturing and the detail that you put into the bird and the bird nest. I mean,
I like drawing birds. It's like a theme of my life. Birds and cats.
So, what are you reading? Anything that you're really enjoying, or think people should check out?
Yeah, no, I recently checked out Jason Aaron's book about the Vietnam War called The Other Side.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just brilliant. So I don't know if you've read it, but yeah, it's fantastic. His cousin, who was the guy who wrote the novel that Full Metal Jacket was based on. This is based on his notes, of like his personal notes of being in the Vietnam War. So it's based on somebody who was there, and it's the writing, both Jason's and the notes from from his cousin who was there, just phenomenal.
Yeah, that's a remarkable miniseries, and I know that Jason, or must have retained the ownership of that, because I believe Image is the one that has recently republished that, even though it was originally published through Vertigo, which says a lot about the staying power of the story itself.
Yeah. No, I think this is like my biggest frustration in comics is that things sort of go out of print or things sort of disappear into the ether and never heard from again. So when a quality story manages to stick around, I consider that not only a triumph for the story and for the writer and the artist, but also for the medium itself.
Yeah, most definitely. Oh, go ahead, Chad. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to make a comment that, when you walk into a comic book store and you see, a wall or two of nothing but trade paperbacks, that's just a great feeling, right?
Yeah.
On top of just the back issues themselves, because you're looking at a library and you never know what's going to be somebody's first comic. But hey, there's that thing I read 15 years ago that I didn't think anybody else remembered.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing against the people. There's no wrong way to enjoy a comic book, and if people enjoy, the collecting comics, that's great. But for me, I feel like I personally write for more like people who are readers than collectors, and that's kind of the way I want them to be experienced. I want them to be experienced kind of as literature. It's like something you sit down with as a book and read. And I want people to like not just sort of scan to like figure out what the story is or to see the splash pages, but to actually read the lines, because I feel like that's the soul of my writing, is like the lines, the dialogue between the characters. And so when I see things that have staying power, resonance as books, it gives me hope that those readers are out there.
Right. Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I say what you will about quote unquote writing for the trade, but the fact that basically everything is collected these days is nothing short of miraculous.
Yeah, and I feel like it's probably the future of the industry, because I feel like the collector's market, as important as it is to the industry and as important as it's been, is starting to taper off more in favor of the reading market.
Yeah, most definitely. And I mean, if you think about it, I mean, that's at least in part a mechanism of survival of competing with manga.
Yeah, I mean, I think manga is a big driver of it. Is that that it's created a reading experience that's very different from like the people who are buying individual comics, because it's the first appearance of character X, or it's like got a variant cover by Bill Sienkiewicz or whatever. And so I think the manga is driving it is bringing a lot more readers into the art medium, and as writers we need to be taking advantage of the fact that it's not just about the collectors anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And to take that a step further, you got to also think about the fact that there's people that only consume it digitally.
Yeah.
Which is a whole nother frontier that is being taken advantage of right now. And I say taken advantage of, that sounds kind of seedy, but
no,
it's the best way.
If you're trying to make your living in the arts, it's like you gotta if there's an angle, exploit it.
Yeah, most definitely. So, with all that in mind, I mean, do you feel like there's ever going to be like a long form trade that you write, or something that's specifically digital that you might dip your toes in those waters?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the book that I want to probably promote for the rest of my life, or the one that I want to see as many mediums as possible, is Traveling to Mars. And so I feel like that's something that in like Snagglepuss, I've thought about revisiting Snagglepuss and like turning into like a musical or something like that. So I feel like there are a lot of things in my career that I've done before that I'm totally happy with being comics. I'm glad that the comics industry published them, but I feel like there's probably more juice in that squeeze. There's more things I can do with these things.
Now, yeah. I know I tend to, I tend to ask this every time, but was there something that when you were working on Thanksgiving that you maybe learned or, figured out that you can apply to, future works?
Well, I think I'm always learning when I write something, and I feel like the major thing that I learned is like that like once something feels comfortable to me, once it's like becomes like sort of a crutch, I should probably stop doing it. I feel like to me, what makes the work feel fresh, not only as a writer but also to the readers, I think, is not staying within your box, not feeling like, okay, well, this is safe, I know what's going to happen. Rose is like, this is like, every other Ramones song I've ever heard, but like actually surprising people. And so the more you can surprise people with, the format of your work or the tone of your work or, the genre that you're working in, I think that's what you should try to do as a writer who's, still consider yourself to be growing and learning as a writer.
Yeah, that's definitely. Have you and again, we've established you've been doing this for a good long while now, but do you ever surprise yourself anymore with things that you come up with or ideas that you have that maybe, even a year or two ago you might not have?
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes from just staring at the blank screen because, it's like I have ideas of what I'm going to write. What I when I write the pitch, I feel like I have a good idea of what the series is going to be turn out like. But it's very different, when you're actually having to write it. And so when you are staring at the screen and something turns up in your brain that is like 180 degrees from what you thought you were going to write, but is actually a much better idea, it's exhilarating. I mean, there's not many feelings like it. It's like, probably the closest analogy I could come up with is if you were, digging a hole for like a fence and you discover, like a gold nugget. So I love that feeling, and I feel like to me this is what you should be doing as a writer is like not so much bending the words to your vision of what you originally wanted them to do, but remaining open as a vessel to the universe to figure out this just happened on the page or this just came to me, and it's so much better than what I planned. I got to go with it.
Yeah, for sure. In that regard, do you have any writers that you look to for inspiration or have inspired you in the past that, maybe one day I'll touch the hem of their cape sort of thing?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a million writers like that. And, I think for me, some of the big names, some of the obvious names that probably have also inspired a lot of other writers are like, Kurt Vonnegut, who really got me into literature to begin with, and then like Cormac McCarthy and, Ursula K. Le Guin, who was able to sort of like create worlds out of seemingly nothing. And then, like comics creators too, like people like Tom King and Emil Ferris and, who just sort of like have their own sort of unique voice and vision, or it's just like, wow, it's actually possible to write really good, just sort of literature in comics. So there's no shortage. There's nothing really that inspires me more than just reading other writers and seeing the creativity of other people and like the sheer breadth of like themes and things that people come up with to think, well, it's like there's nothing is really hard to me. It's like there's nothing I can't really do because look how much it's like going to a beach and seeing all these kites in the air. It's like as a kid, nothing makes you want to run out and buy a kite more than that, right? And going to beach and seeing 1,000 crazy dragon kites and box kites and stuff flying around in the air, and that's kind of what I feel when I read. It's like, wow, these writers doing so many fascinating things. It's like I know I can't write like that, or I know I'm not going to write the same thing as this person, but I got to get a kite up in the air.
Yeah, I guess that's a great metaphor. So,
well, I mean, I think I'm, and until there's something else I can bug you about.
Well, bug me anytime.
Yeah, most definitely.
Why don't you take the opportunity to temp whatever things you want to temp and where people can find you on.
Okay, well, on social media, I'm most active on Blue Sky, which is my handle is @Manruss, MANRUSS, and second most active probably on Instagram or Threads, and the handle, fortunately, is the same. Also, I have a website, markrussellbooks.com, And yeah, I've got a bunch of projects coming out. Please look for The Forgotten Divine when that comes out. I'm also doing a war series for Mad Cave, which I've never written a war series, so this is like stretching for me, but I'm very proud of how it's turning out. And it's called Dog Tag, and it should be coming out early 2026 as well.
Well, we'll have to have you back for that.
Yeah, most
that'd be great.
definitely. All right. Well, everybody, Mark Russell has been our guest tonight, and he's the comic in question is Thanksgiving from Ahoy, and you should absolutely check it out because it's a great read, just like everything else he touches. So
It has all the classic Ahoy stuff like the back matter and stuff like that.
yes.
No,
Yes,
they're just a
it
really
does.
good publisher. I mean, it feels like a Cadillac experience.
So, okay. Well, folks, until next time, get your fill of turkey and stuffing and all that good, and pie and all that good Thanksgiving stuff. And we will see you next time. He's Chad, I'm Matt, and you can check us out regularly at comic-watch.com. Until then, bring some joy to the world. We definitely need it these days more than ever. And above all, just don't be a dick. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.